Hello, my name is Tracy Sinclair and welcome to Coaching in Conversation, the Mastery Series. This series of conversations explores the concept of mastery in coaching. And I have the great pleasure of talking with several ICF Master Certified coaches from around the world to understand what mastery really means to them, both as coaching practitioners and also as human beings. We explore many different perspectives and nuances of this topic, and I hope it is of use and interest to you as you continue to navigate your own pathway of development. Hello, it's Tracy Sinclair here again and welcoming you to another episode of Coaching in Conversation. This episode is part of our Mastery series, and today I have the great pleasure of talking with Elena Chelokidi, who is a colleague of mine from several years ago within the ICF community when she and I were both presidents of a local chapter. And since that time, Elena has been very, very active, not just as a coach, but also a mentor, a publisher, a psychologist, a public speaker on coaching, and also teaching team coaching, which is an area that she really specializes in. She is also, apart from publishing and translating many materials in the field, she has also won a Young Leaders Award with the ICF for her significant contribution to the marketplace and to the field of coaching. So I really hope that you enjoy this episode. It's titled Developing Mastery by Working with Teams. Enjoy. So Elena, it's such a pleasure to have the opportunity to reconnect with you. And before we clicked record just now, we were just trying to work out how long ago it was that we saw each other, and it was quite a few years ago, which is a shame in a way, because I think we caught up quite a few times in different ICF meetings and conferences, but it's still a great pleasure to reconnect with you today. And thank you so much for coming to talk about coaching and perhaps your thoughts on mastery in coaching. Let's start off perhaps by just inquiring about how you came into coaching yourself in the first place.
Hello, Tracy. I'm very glad to see you again too. I suppose it's about 6 years passed from our last meeting. How I got into coaching? It was an interesting story. I was the executive director in one company, and then I tired and I decided to quit. And I was sitting in a kitchen with my friend, and we were thinking, what should I do next? It was 2012, I suppose. And she said to me, her field is marketing and she works in the university. She said me, you should try coaching. And I asked what coaching is. And she said, okay, you will like it. You have already done it. You will like. And after that, exactly at that moment, I founded in internet 2 schools of coaching. And we have decided that I will go to the nearest to my house. So after that, I go there. And I met there Marsha Reynolds. And I was very surprised. And I thought, oh, I want to be like her at that moment. So, well, this is the way how I got into coaching.
And here you are.
Yeah, yes. At last, I was a president of ICF chapter, and I'm an MCC now. Yes.
Wonderful.
For me, it was really like a fairy tale.
Sorry. A nice fairy tale. So let's start then with this topic of mastery. I guess mastery generally and mastery in coaching, which is a bit more specific. When you think of mastery in our work, what is it that evokes for you?
Generally, first I will say several words about mastery as general. I think it's about balance between pleasure of doing something and result that we have. I think that when we master, we do our best and we have great results, but at the same time, we don't think about how to do that, how to do this, and we don't nervous. We just live in the process and we have the result like a master. So, and about coaching, my goal when I decided to become an MCC, and it was a conscious choice, I wanted to make my sessions naturally, and at the same time, I wanted them to fit MCC requirements. So it was my huge goal when I started my journey. And I could say that I achieved it because when I sent my sessions to ICF, it was, as I remember, 2022. I sent them my sessions from 2020 because I couldn't find a mentor who could assess it. And I decided, okay, ICF will assess it. And I sent them session by session. It was my sessions with people, and I couldn't say that I was very, okay, I don't think I thought a lot about my competences while I do them. And two of my sessions, ICF said, okay, it's MCC level. So mastery for me, it's both about pleasure during the process and about the result.
Mm. Mm.
That's how I could express it.
That's great. And there's something else that you said in there that's really interesting is you said you wanted to be natural, to coach naturally and meet the ICF requirements at the same time. And that's a question that has been asked so many times, isn't it? You know, how do I meet the ICS requirements and just be myself? What do you think helped you bring those things together? Because it's such a challenging thing for many of us, I think.
Let me think. What helped me? Let me share several points, several different points maybe on the topic. The first time that was important for me, it was a dialogue with Benita Stafford-Smith. I'm sure you know her very well. And we talked about PCC level and ACC level and MCC level. And I asked her, how could I understand that I'm at MCC level, Benita? How could I? And she asked me, how do you know that you're at PCC level? Okay, I could assess my ACC sessions, and I can look at them and see what's not perfect and what don't meet PCC requirements. I could assess it. And she said, okay, so how could you understand that you're at MCC level? I said, I think I could look at my PCC sessions and could understand what's wrong with them or what's perfect with them. And it was my like self-assessment marker. Whether I live in the session and couldn't understand what is happening, bad or not bad or something else. And or I conscious during the sessions and could understand what is going on and what my client say. And that's, I think this is the huge point. How could I understand that I'm natural because I'm living through the session, and at the same time understand that it is a good result or it's MCC or not? Because I really felt the moment when I could look at my PCC, at my own PCC sessions from the side, because at that time I was an assessor for PCC level. I could look at other sessions. Why not? But it was rather different to look at my own sessions. This is one point. Another, when I talked with Leda Turai about my sessions, it was one from my side, it was perfect session. And I sent it to her. And she sent it back and we had a call. And she said, it's a really perfect session, but it is not an MCC level. How it could be? And she talked to me that she couldn't understand what exactly not an MCC level. It's a good PCC and all markers are there, but what's wrong? And I said, really, it was a boring session for me. It was really boring session. It was a common request and it was common questions. And I really knew what my client would say next. And I would ask, and she said, yes, it's about curiosity. It wasn't interesting for you. I said, no, it wasn't interesting. It was session for PCC or MCC. It was just perfect session. I said, no, it's so important when you coach somebody to feel curiosity. And I asked her, but my client went to me, and it means that this topic is very important for him. And he brought it to me. So how could I say, no, it's not interesting for me. It's a 2053rd, for example, request. And she said, no, how could you express it? Please share. And I realized that I could say, oh, I see it is a really important request for you, but what lies under it or behind it? And at that moment, maybe my client will share with me something that will be interesting also and for me too. So I think it's the second the second point that relates me with mastering and with nature mania to make sessions. And maybe the third thing is to be able and to be really curious with metaphors that our clients brings to us, to our sessions. Because I like book Alice in Wonderland. And about curiosity, I very often remind the book Sherlock Holmes. And I feel myself as Sherlock Holmes, and I'm very curious. So, and another book is Alice in Wonderland. For me, it was like a huge metaphor in that world, yes. And I feel myself the same way during sessions when my client bring, for example, I want to be a vase, vase of glass or not, and I feel that I see that face and I could ask questions about it and what is nearby and why it is. And I feel that it is very important space for our clients where they could express things that they couldn't express directly in our world. So, and two of my sessions for MCC that passed the exam, it was about working with metaphor of clients. So it's also about mastery for me and about curiosity and about what's interesting, what is going here. And I think it's about also intention to help the client find the way to go through a session with the client. And yes, it's for me, it's help them to find their way and way out maybe from the session or something.
Wow, that's so interesting, Elena. Thank you. And I've just written a couple of things down there because I'd love to probe a little bit more there or share a comment. First of all, your point about listening to your own work is such a powerful tool, isn't it? And it's something I know none of us like to listen to our work, I guess, very much. It's not something that is always enjoyable to do, but I know I have found for myself, and I encourage everyone I work with to do that. So, I'm just thinking in terms of people listening to this who want to develop their coaching, whatever credential level they are, really listening to your own work and comparing it to how it was before, or to even share in peer groups, exchanging and discussing our work is so powerful. The other thing that was coming up for me was when you recognized that you were a little bit bored by the topic, or it wasn't something that stimulated you, which was really striking to me on two levels. First of all, the point that you said around curiosity, it has to engage your curiosity as well to bring, I guess, to bring your mastery to the surface. But also the clean honesty here that a coach could be bored by a topic or a client. We're human as well, and not every conversation at its surface is going to be immediately stimulating, perhaps. And so we're perhaps this is about the partnership again of really finding where is the piece of work, where is the gem, if you like, or the golden nugget in this conversation.
When I have some kind of boring sessions, I try to find really something interesting, maybe interesting word, maybe interesting collocation. And I say, oh, how interesting this person speaks. And it gives me energy to be involved more. Because when something surprised me, I started to think maybe from another side to the situation or to that person. So this is my key to curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love also what you said about metaphor. And I know, some people love metaphor and some people don't love metaphor. But I guess what was really coming up for me was two things there. Was one about really engaging with the way a client likes to process. If a client wants to be in that storytelling or metaphorical language, do we have the capacity to go with them? But also the fact that even if metaphor isn't our thing particularly, there are other creative ways to work with clients in a way that sort of lifts the conversation from just transactional language. I don't know if I'm making sense there, but I'm just curious about the slightly altered level that metaphor can take us to, that's often very evocative.
And for me, also interesting here, let me add to ask, for me to ask opposite questions. When our client also speak about me, okay, what others do think about this situation. When client more speak about emotions, I will ask about a rational part. So for me, it's also interesting to look from the side and to ask questions from the opposite part of the spectrum. And it usually gives huge insights to the client. Oh, I have never think about that. And it helps me. And I took it from cross-cultural approach. Maybe somebody will read about it. I hope, I hope to. It helped me. And I also wanted to add about listening our own work, because for me it's really, really hard to listen to my voice, how do I speak, and intonation. And it is rather easier for me to read my transcripts. So why not? You could transcribe your sessions and then analyze it. And what I've done and what I do even nowadays. So maybe it help somebody.
Yeah.
to turn to their work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned, I know earlier when we were chatting, that you do a lot of work now with teams, team coaching, and how team coaching has really informed your coaching and supported your MCC development. So tell us more about that.
Yes, it was a huge support to my MCC. Yes, I really from 2015 I'm working with teams, and I like there that I have several levels of work, individual and at the same time team level, and at the same time I'm working about on trust, and we are moving to the goal, and we are working on the team working skills. So I like difficult work, so that it is interesting for me. And I've thought a lot about ICF competencies and teamwork, as I was a part of international group that developed team coaching competencies. For example, our third competence, contracting. When we start our coaching career, it is usually difficult for us to make a contract to the session, to speak about important things really that it is really important for our clients, and to communicate what exactly clients want to achieve at the end. But just imagine that we have 8 or 7 people who don't know exactly what do they want, and each person has their own thoughts about the result, and has its own thoughts about what they could or that they could not do. And when you bring together all opinions in one, I could say, single great opinion, and you contact with them what they together want to achieve at the end of the session, and you couldn't work with the topic what is not important for them, because you will have somebody who will say, why do we talking about that? We are spending our time because somebody or will don't want to have changes in that team. So after I realized that after my practice in team coaching, I really don't afraid of individual coaching. It's so interesting, some kind, maybe simple, and it brings so many pleasure. My work, our individual coaching after teams, after working with teams. So, and what about trust? If you can develop trust with several people at the same time, with their different characters, with their different temper. So it means that you will be able to develop trust relationship with one single person. And for me, it's also about other competencies. And for example, when you are present, you have no choice. You should be present with the team, because you should understand what is happening at the same moment and what is happening generally at the space and where we go. And about questions, for example, as you sure know, that the coach should ask simple and clear questions one at a time, and you have only no choice while you're working with team to ask several questions at one time, and to ask difficult for understanding questions, because you again will have somebody in their room who will ask, what exactly have you asked? Could you repeat it again? And that could you repeat it again and again helps you to formulate your questions very short, very clear, in to have them very understandable for many people. So that's why I could say that I think team coaching gives a lot of field to develop your individual coaching and to make a huge step to your PCC if you are ACC or MCC if you are PCC. After teams, you couldn't afraid one person session with one person.
Wow, that's so interesting, Eleanor. I mean, it makes perfect sense now that you've said that, but I'd never thought about that. But of course, you know, the complexity, the diversity, the potential for confusion, the potential for difference or conflict, or, you know, all sorts of things that you're dealing with in a group or team dynamic. That's very good training, isn't it,
For coaches.
for that one-to-one work when, as you're saying, as we progress through these credential levels, we're looking at working more deeply and more broadly, more systemically and contextually, which of course with team coaching you have to do anyway. So that's really fascinating. So there's a piece of advice perhaps for people there if they want to develop their normal coaching skills or their one-to-one coaching skills, is work with some difficult teams perhaps. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I would say for that people who will think about team coaching, it is a very slightly difference between coaching and facilitation. And it's very important not to be a facilitator with the teams, because if you are, you couldn't feel group dynamics. You will give them templates and they will do according to them and you won't feel. But if you're a coach, you feel it and you're undirective, completely undirective. And you will ask, you want red marker or blue marker, for example, because they should make a choice.
Yeah.
You want to draw or to write, who will write? So you at every single moment you are in a dialogue and you are in a contact with the group or team in my
Yeah.
sentence. So I think it gives a very big complexity, as you say, to develop one-to-one coaching.
I love that idea. I think that's amazing. And
You will practice team coaching. Now
yeah, well, I have and do work with teams. Not, I work more with a one-to-one, admittedly, but I never thought about working with teams to develop towards my MCC. I think that's an amazing idea. Going to have to tell everybody about that. So I'm just thinking then, Eleanor, if you've already shared some really, really useful things, but if there's coaches listening here who maybe do have their PCC, or even if they have their ACC and but they're really keen to go for their MCC at some point. Not that as coaches we give advice, because of course we don't do that. But if you were going to offer something to people who are thinking about that, what would you say? What would you offer up to them?
I will offer, please stay natural while you coaching, because it's so difficult to play some role while you coach, and it's so difficult to work when you coach. So try to feel pleasure and stay curious and feel it like a play while you're coaching, and I think you become MCC.
Mm. Mm. And I have a question to ask you about that I get asked so many times, and I don't always have a good answer for this. So I'm wondering if you have a better one. Is this question around how so many of us can feel very uncomfortable when the work is being recorded, which of course at the moment we have to do this because of sending in recordings. And I hear so many times that people feel so uncomfortable and they feel they have to perform. Do you have any guidance on how people can just get more comfortable with that process?
With recordings,
Yeah.
From my side, for example, it is very important to know that something could be re-recorded or something could be cutted if something goes wrong. It doesn't mean that I will cut something, but it is like a trick for my mind just to relax. It could be changed. Nothing should be perfect. It's not final version. Just relax. It helps me.
Yeah. I think it's just one of those things, isn't it, that for some people it really can get in the way. And I usually recommend that people record as much as they can, respecting copyright and data protection, of course, but so that the recording becomes less of an issue. It just becomes less conscious. But I know that it's something that troubles people.
Yes.
So I'm just noticing the time, and we're probably going to have to start coming to a pause soon. But just before we do that, Elena, is there anything else that from your, incredible experience as a coach and a team coach, is there anything else that you would like to share that we've not covered in terms of how coaches can just keep developing in the best way possible?
I think I want to share once more advice, maybe. While we were talking, I reminded that it is very important to completely forget about yourself during your coaching. At master level, I do. That's maybe my different from my PCC level also, because I completely forget about me as Elena. How do I look from the side? How do I behave? I really don't think about it. I think completely about my client, team or individual client.
Mm.
And I think it will help somebody to become MCC2.
Yeah.
So,
You're reminding me of that classic statement of we have to get out of our own way. So it's yeah, that's the solution to many of our challenges, isn't it? Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Eleanor. It's been such a pleasure to catch up with you again, and I hope it's not another 6 or 7 years before we talk.
I hope to.
I hope so. I hope so. But it's been so lovely to catch up with you, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and perspectives.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Coaching in Conversation, the Mastery Series, a podcast that takes a look at mastery in coaching, what it is, what that means, how do we nurture or cultivate it, and many other interesting questions. You can hear more about coaching education and development at tracysinclair.com and follow us on social media. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and a review, and also share it with your network to help us expand our reach. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.